Before we go further, let's turn off the layer called level green so it won't be too distracting. We'll twirl up the knob and also twirl up the level red too. We'll open up our shy layers so we can see one of the layers below called light flare. And we'll unshy this, then shy those layers back up again. Next, I'll hold down the spacebar and drag the comp up in the window so we can see more of this light in the lower right-hand corner of our composition. I'm going to open up the layer to reveal the effect. With the layer selected, by typing E on the keyboard, we'll see that there's an effect for tone. By opening up the tone, we can see that there are different parameters for this one effect. I'll go back to frame 0 by typing Home on the keyboard. The effect tone allows me to generate different frequencies to make a sound. In order to hear our sound, we'll turn on the sound icon in the visibility column, then click on 0 to hear it in a RAM preview. Now we can edit the volume or the level of this tone by changing the keyframes here. I'll set a first keyframe for 50%. Then at 10 frames in, we'll set a value for 0. At 20 frames, we'll set another value for 50%. I'll select all of the keyframes by clicking and dragging a marquee around them, then using Ctrl-Alt-H or Command-Option-H to create hold keyframes for all of them. Now, instead of a continuous tone, we should have a beep at the beginning. Instead of having these keyframes occur only once, we want to create an expression so that it continues to occur throughout the duration of our composition. Very simply, we can use the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac to create another expression. We'll go over to the levels and click on the stopwatch. If you have multiple properties selected, you may have created an expression on a property that you didn't want to express. We can simply remedy this by using F2 on the keyboard to deselect all of the parameters, simply using the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac, then click on the stopwatch that you don't want to express. We'll open up our levels expression and see that our expression here is already written for us so that After Effects will do what it's supposed to do. What we want After Effects to do is continue doing it over and over, looping these keyframes out until the very end of the composition. The icons in the expression column are to allow the expression to be active or inactive, to allow us to see the expression in the graph, to parent one expression to another parameter, and last, a small flyout menu. This flyout menu allows us to look at different expression commands and provides a nice starter script for some of the JavaScript we'll need to put into our expression. One of them is under Property. Under Property, we can see that there is a loop in duration, and loop out duration. What this allows us to do is loop a set number of keyframes for a certain number of time or continuously from the beginning to the end of our composition. We'll choose the loop out command and simply click on the phrase. Now After Effects has filled in the JavaScript, including some of the definitions for what it's expecting. The first part is the type. In the first part of this expression, it's looking for a type of looping. There are two types of looping. One is cycling, which loops it out over and over. When it gets to the last keyframe, it will go to the first keyframe again and start over again. Similarly to the RAM preview, we also have ping pong. If we type in the word ping pong, we will get a different type of looping where the expression will interpolate all of the keyframes from the first keyframe to the last keyframe, then start again from the last keyframe to the first keyframe, and bounce back and forth much like a ping pong ball does across a ping pong table. The second part of this array is the number of keyframes we want to loop. Here, After Effects has set the number to 0. Using the number 0 in this position actually indicates that After Effects will use all of the keyframes on this animation parameters track. I'll simply use Enter on the number pad to accept this, and now rather than having the tone beep at the beginning, then create a single tone through the end of the composition, the levels for the tone go up and down for the entire duration of our composition. We'll change the type of effect back to cycle. So double-clicking in the expression window, we can modify the expression to change ping pong back to cycle. If you've typed the word cycle incorrectly by clicking, then typing cycle, maybe with an extra L. After Effects will remind you that cycle, the word, is not a legal value for the argument, and the expression will be disabled. We'll click OK, and notice that the expression hasn't been deleted, but instead it has merely been turned off with an alarm telling you that there's a warning something in this expression is wrong. Taking a quick look at the JavaScript, you can go back and then modify the word so that the syntax is correct. Once you hit Enter again with the correct syntax, After Effects will turn on the expression for you. We'll twirl up the effects controls, then go up to Layer. Then under Layer Styles, we'll add a layer style for glow. We'll change the value of the glow so that it's larger by modifying its spread and its size. We'll change its color to something more alarming. And click OK. Last, we'll use F4 to change the transfer mode. You may want to use Add so that it brightens the entire scene when it's turned on. The last thing we'll want to do is link the opacity of this layer to the levels of the tone. So we'll type T for opacity, and then again, holding down the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac, click on the stopwatch for opacity. I'll simply click to accept this because I don't have the tone revealed on the timeline. I'll click the layer that I want to reveal it on, then holding the Shift key down, type U on the keyboard. This is going to open up the levels because I already have keyframes for that parameter. I'll simply click and drag the pick whip from the opacity to the levels. Then I'll hit Enter to accept it. Notice that the opacity is changed to 50% to the levels 50%. This isn't very alarming, and I need the opacity for the flare to be 100%. A very easy mathematical change is to simply modify this JavaScript. You can use the arrow keys on the keyboard to navigate to the beginning of the phrase. Then use an open parentheses at the beginning and a close parentheses at the end of the phrase. Next, we use the multiply sign, which is the small asterisk. You can use Shift 8 or the asterisk on your number pad, but don't use the X. It's not a times value like that. We need the multiplication symbol. Then we want to multiply this by 2. Once we hit Enter, we'll see the change made. Here, when the level for the audio is 50%, the opacity will be twice as great. In between, the level is 0, and 2 times 0 will still produce a value of 0. By revealing our level expressions, we can see the small icon for the graph. If we turn this on, then turn on our graph, we can see the original values for our keyframe. Then we can see the looping values as it continues to loop out through the course of our entire animation. Because we are telling the level of the audio to loop out, and the opacity is going to follow the value of the level, the opacity will loop out through the duration of the clip as well. We can see that by turning on the icon for our graph under the opacity as well. Now, in order to hear our audio effect and see our opacity levels changing, we'll just simply click on 0 on the number pad to create a RAM preview. Now it's much more alarming, and if we need to change the speed of our levels, we can simply click the one keyframe and change both the opacity and the levels together.